My friend Keith has an uncle who suffers from dementia. To make a long story short, his uncle usually lives with Keith's grandmother. But she had gone to Florida for a week with a church group, and Keith himself had to leave town for a business trip. Since both of them would be gone, Keith asked me to stay at the house while he was away. Part of that job was keeping an eye on his uncle, who I will call Uncle Nick. Keith was only supposed to be gone for 2 days. On the first day of house sitting, I mostly spent my time relaxing. I read and tanned in the backyard for a while, and later sat in the living room watching TV. I cooked twice that day, and both times I made extra food so Uncle Nick could eat as well. The strange part was that I never once saw him come out of his upstairs bedroom. Eventually, I went up and gently knocked on his door to let him know food was ready. From inside the room, I heard a low grunting sound. I figured that was his way of responding. I had never actually met his uncle before. Now that I thought about it, Keith never formally introduced us when he hired me to stay there. According to Keith, Uncle Nick knew I would be in the house. Still, he never came downstairs to eat while I was around. When night came, I went to sleep in Keith's spare bedroom. I left my door slightly open so I could hear anything unusual. After a while, I heard a door open somewhere down the hall, followed by fast and heavy footsteps. They moved quickly down the hallway and then down the stairs. Only seconds later, I heard the same footsteps rushing back up the stairs and back into the room. The door slammed shut. It made me uneasy. There was something about how intense the footsteps sounded. It felt like he was deliberately trying to avoid me. The second day was almost identical to the first. I cooked 2 meals again and left the plates on the kitchen counter for Uncle Nick. Later, while I was lying outside in the backyard, I came back inside and noticed one of the plates was empty. So he was definitely coming out when I was not around. I went back outside to tan again, but at some point, I glanced up toward the bedroom window where Nick was staying. He was standing there, watching me. The moment he realized I had seen him, he quickly ducked out of view. That was enough to make me feel extremely uncomfortable. I folded up my blanket, went back inside, and returned to the spare bedroom. After that, things stayed quiet. One more night of this, and then I would finally be going home. That evening, I cooked dinner and left another plate out for him. As I headed upstairs toward the spare bedroom, I noticed that his bedroom door was standing open. That was the first time I had seen it open. I thought maybe he was starting to feel more comfortable. I brushed my teeth and went into my room for the night, figuring it was best to give him some space. I had a hard time falling asleep though. I felt wide awake, just laying there in the dark. After a while, I heard a brief creaking noise from somewhere inside the room. I could hear it clearly, even over the fan running beside me. I sat up and slowly looked around, my eyes adjusting enough to make out shapes in the dark. I did not see anything. More importantly, I did not see Uncle Nick. I started feeling paranoid. I kept asking myself why he was creeping me out so badly. I laid back down on my side, facing the wall next to the bed. For the most part, I tried to ignore the small sounds I thought I was imagining. But when I heard a faint groan, I sat up again and turned off the fan so I could listen. I heard someone breathing. I turned toward the far right side of the room near the desk. That was when I saw him. He was sitting in the desk chair, turned directly toward me. I screamed. He rushed toward me, whispering "she," and put his hand over my mouth. In that moment, I honestly thought he was trying to suffocate me. I shoved him away and sprinted to the nearest bathroom, slamming the door shut and locking it. From inside, I heard his frantic footsteps racing back to his room before the door slammed closed. My heart felt like it was about to explode. I immediately called Keith and told him what had happened. The terrifying part was how calm he sounded. He did not seem all that surprised. He told me it would be safest to sleep in the bathroom with the door locked. Hearing him say that made it clear that his Uncle Nick could be dangerous. My dad once shared a true scary story from his own life, back when he was in his 20s. At the time, he was still living with my grandparents. They had an elderly couple living next door, who were both in their 60s. One winter, the woman next door, named Margie, suddenly went missing. Her husband came over and knocked on my grandparents' door, asking if they had seen her. Sadly, they had not. As far as anyone knew, no one had seen her at all. A few days later, my dad was at the park playing football with his friends. While they were out there, it began to snow. They kept playing for a bit, enjoying it, but eventually the snowfall became too heavy. They all headed home after that. When my dad got back to his house, he noticed that his parents were not there. He started a fire in the fireplace, then went into his bedroom, which was right next to the living room, to drop his things on the bed. After that, he went to take a hot shower. When he stepped out of the bathroom, he thought he heard someone humming coming from the living room. Still wrapped in his towel, he cracked the door open and called out, "Mom?" The humming immediately stopped, but the sound of creaking continued. My dad quickly got dressed in the bathroom and walked into the living room. Sitting in my grandfather's old rocking chair was Margie from next door. She looked directly at my dad and calmly said that it had been so cold and she needed somewhere warm. Terrified, my dad ran next door to get her husband. When the two of them rushed back into the living room, the rocking chair was empty and Margie was gone. Together, they searched the entire house, calling out her name, but she was nowhere to be found. Even this part of the story was enough to unsettle me when my dad told it, but it did not end there. The truly horrifying part came the next day. Margie's dead body was discovered in the crawl space of the house next door. Apparently, she had fallen and cut her head open on something sharp. Her husband only found her because the smell had become so strong that he noticed it from the garage. What made it even more disturbing was that authorities believed she had been dead for at least 3 days, even though my dad had seen her in the living room the day before. To this day, my dad believes he saw Margie's ghost in my grandparents' living room that night. He is not the type of person to make stories like that up. When he first told us this story, I was 9 years old, and I barely slept at all that night. There has been a lot of Black Lives Matter protesting happening around where I live. Before I say anything else, I want to make it clear that I fully support the Black Lives Matter movement. That said, this is my personal view, that looting and rioting are not acceptable, and anyone taking part in those actions should not be lumped in with peaceful protesters. Sadly, there are people who take advantage of these situations, blending in with legitimate protesters while causing chaos. A few nights ago, several homes and businesses in the town next to ours were broken into, and many cars had their windows smashed. Through friends who know local police officers, rumors started spreading that our town might be targeted the following night. Because of that, my family stayed up later than usual. We were watching a movie together when we suddenly heard shouting outside and muted the television to listen. Looking out the window, we saw a large group of young men wearing masks walking down the street. They were not carrying protest signs or chanting slogans. They were simply yelling loudly, and it sounded like a lot of swearing. Since they were not damaging anything at the time, we went back to watching the movie. Later on, my parents went upstairs to sleep. I stayed awake in my bedroom, playing a video game with my headset on so I could talk with my friends. After a while, I got bored and tired, shut everything off, and headed downstairs to grab a glass of water before bed. As I walked past the small half staircase leading down into our den, something caught my eye. There was a large object sitting on the carpet near the window. I walked down the steps to get a closer look, and when I picked it up, I immediately realized what it was. It was a section of broken window glass, completely taped up, as if someone had tried to make breaking it easier or quieter. I ran straight to my parents' room and woke my dad. As soon as he saw it, he called the police. The response time felt incredibly long. My dad mentioned that we were lucky to even get through, since emergency calls in our area had increased dramatically. When officers arrived and searched the house, they did not find anything missing and found no sign that anyone had been inside. They had to leave within 20 minutes to respond to another call, but told us to call again if anything else happened. My dad and I decided to sleep in the den for the rest of the night to keep an eye on things, while my mom went back upstairs. Time seemed to crawl by, and eventually I think my dad fell asleep. Then a sudden rush of cold air hit my face through the opening where the window used to be, causing me to open my eyes and look straight at it. There was no one outside, but for some reason I thought I heard a sound coming from upstairs. I went up the small set of stairs, thinking it might have been my mom moving around. When I reached the kitchen, I could still hear noises coming from above me. I continued upstairs, and the sounds were still coming from overhead. That was when it hit me. The only thing above that floor was the attic. I walked to the storage room upstairs where the attic entrance was located.